So today we'll be working on a Union Pacific SD40-2. And the first step, as always, is to put down the basic rail line. And once we put down the basic rail line, it's right between about 1/2 inch and 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to switch over. This is a 3H pencil here that I'm going to be working with. And want to come in right about 1/4 inch. And basically an SD40-2 is 10 and right between 1/4 and 1/2 inch. And you want to leave room for the couplers on both ends. And then the height of it is right between 1/4 and an inch, right at 7/8. So getting our frame. And part of why you want the rail to be nice and flat is because you want your frame to be nice and straight. This 3H pencil is kind of a good pencil to be working with, where it's not too terribly dark as far as picking up the, like when the yellow paints over it, but you can kind of see what you're doing too at the same time. And then it's right almost 1 3/4 inches for the cab. And then the cab's right at about 1 inch. And then you basically want to go right about 1 1/4 inches or so. Yeah, right about that. And then 2 3/4 inches or so for the engine room doors. And the back porch is almost 1 inch. And once you get the back porch, it's 1.5 inches high. So where it's 1.5 inches tall, why don't we basically get the shell of the engine drawn. It's always kind of a good, pretty early first step to get this shell. And as I've said, almost right at 1/4 inch, this tail light's always a good first step so that it doesn't come straight down. And one thing, sometimes a little bit forget, but instead of drawing the cab all the way to the frame on this side, on -2 locomotives, there's kind of a little inset right here with the battery box. And there we go. Especially on these like lighter, like Union Pacific, you can kind of see. And right at 1/4 inch is where this goes. Then a little over 1/8 inch is where the step goes. Then actually, why don't we put the actual step up to the engine? Almost 1/2 inch, not quite. 1/4 inch off the ground. Putting the step in is a little helpful for seeing where the nose kind of goes. far as it goes just a little bit behind it. It goes up right about an inch. Get a little bit, kind of erase it. A little bit further. A little bit further. Don't be afraid to erase. There we go. And put the number board. And then, why don't we put the engine room doors? So, this is down about 1/4 of an inch. Then this section is an inch, this section's about an inch, and this section's about 1/2 of an inch. And if you've watched these before, there's basically 4 doors here that are each 1/4 of an inch, and 4 doors here that are each 1/4 of an inch, and then there's 2 doors there. And then we can put this section in of doors. These doors are a little wider. They're a little over 1/4 of an inch. There's 1 door. There's 2 doors. Then the front doors are actually just almost the same width as these. Now, I recommend being a little bit more patient. I've done these hundreds of times. I'm mainly doing it at this speed just to keep it moving along for the video. And if you're just practicing at home, take your time. I definitely recommend taking your time. Pull away so you can see what I'm doing. But you can basically, here, why don't we put the cab. As I've said, these -2 locomotives have this little bit of, and why don't we put the, but you can see in this first step how much of the locomotive we're actually, here, straighten that, how much of the locomotive we're actually able to get from the ground up. All right, in the next step, we'll work on the grills.